Thank you, Jermaine. I think this is an important example of collab with countries learning from countries, 8 countries of the Caribbean sharing experiences, generating policies. I think we can learn a lot from those experiences from other countries and potentiate to strengthen capacities in system strengthening. Thank you for the presentations that shows us the work and on the ground, on the field, how KIX has potentiated these initiatives of strengthening and capacity building. Our next block before lunch, we're going to have a dialogue space with ministers of education that join us today. This panel is called Learnings and Foundational Competences, Challenges, Innovation, and Policies Challenges. So I'm going to mention those who are going to join us. They're on the screen so you can see them. We ask Claudia Morales. She is representing Guatemala from the Ministry of Guatemala. Mauricio Pineda, El Salvador Minister of Education. David Andrew, Grenade Ministry of Education. Robert Renicks, Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Education of Dominica. Curtis King, Ministry of Saint Vincent and Grenadines. And the panel will be moderated by Javier González. All participants have a microphone next to you. You can use that microphone and Javier will start. Thank you for what we've seen so far to listen to different countries' experiences, specifically within KIX. But we want to thank the presence of our ministers from Guatemala's minister represented by Claudia. And we want to talk about the policies that have been worked on the region. The topic is the fundamental learnings, early childhood. Specifically, we are going to have a round of questions, and so you can respond accordingly. I'm going to ask the ministers and our delegate 4 minutes per response. I know we're Latin, we're Caribbean. 4 minutes feel like 30 seconds, but the idea is that we all can listen to one another. We're going to have different rounds of questions. I'll tell you which ones there are, which ones are the questions, so you don't get in advance of the questions. First is challenges. Second will be focused on innovation. And third, support priorities that you can, so the international cooperation or donors can give. And then we'll have some specific questions. I think we're going to have a good time to deepen on these. First question focused on education. Which ones are the main debts in writing and reading in our countries, knowing that unfortunately we've had some advances, we are still have a level of failure per se to our younger generation. It's not related with government. These are historic numbers, historic policies. It's not this specific government, but what are the main gaps in the art that we need to address urgently? We are going to start with my right, with Claudia. We know that our countries have a historic debt and that it's reflected in inequality and injustice. When it comes to reading and writing, the debt is great, and that is it's the way that it early childhood has been invisible to give a holistic attention and approach that allows children to grow with a holistic uh, development. We have an extreme rurality in Guatemala with many parts of the territory where if there's no food, we're not going to have learning opportunities. We have families that have not had access to education, to their right of education. Moms that don't know and don't have the minimal knowledge for children to develop correctly. The misnourishment also affect the development of our children. From there, there's disadvantage from the acquisition of language and the writing. And if we see moms nowadays, they have these disadvantages of knowledge and in the moms with their native languages they communicate to their children, and when they got to school the language that they're going to the language is different, so makes the children not to be fair when they're learning to write and read. So our challenges is the holistic attention of early childhood, and not only in Guatemala, but that deep rurality, it's a pain. And something great about this meeting is how to start. We start listening to ourselves, but to listen to ourselves, we need to tell the truth, our voice to tell the truth. And that is very important. So when we see these gaps in access of minimal rights for our population, we wonder what we could do. We ask ourselves, what can we do? What has the government has done for the right attention of human rights? In the early childhood, we have a curriculum that is not updated for that age. And we believe that this attention has to be from the communitarian, and that implies that there's no infrastructure, that there's no investment in how they have to be attended. You cannot tell a mom to improve their socioeconomic condition, I'm going to go work because I don't, and the kid cannot stay alone at home. So we should not think only for the big educational health terms, but from the reality of the families. They don't have access to a book. We want kids to, when they get to primary school, to be excited about reading, but if they haven't been exposed to educational material, how they want to have that need and interest of reading the curiosity for letters. We need to be clear that we need to have a system of follow up and registry of evidence on how we're going to develop the, the child holistically. We need to have a strategy as government to attend our children holistically. Time goes by real quickly. I know it's hard. Minister, do not this 4 minutes for the greetings I'll give to each one. So, greetings for this important meeting for the region, this type of spaces that did not exist previously. We need to value them as they are. Thank you, Summa, Javier, and the team, and everyone that made possible KIX for this to happen. Not only for the governments when it comes to ministers and functionaries, but the civil society that is part of the educational system. I think from the public policy perspective, the colleague from Guatemala mentioned it. One of the main debts pending in the development of foundational teaching and education, talking about El Salvador, the quality and access to be equal. We need to coordinate in our policies to be oriented in closing these gaps. Countries like El Salvador, we've worked a lot, but we cannot tell that it's closed. And there are challenges in ensuring that each child and teenager, independently on their economical level, their location, to receive quality education that would allow them to be competent in reading, writing, and math. That should be the objective. If we're not there for that, I always like to say, let's grab our things and go. Let's do something else because we might be happier if we do so. I also need to mention that we have curricular challenges, and as countries, we need to focus in updating the programs to be flexible. The traditional, the traditional, sorry, I cannot hear. In today's education, is not only addressed by the academic, but to me, what's very important, and I call all education to be part of, are social emotional topics. If we don't have the right education, we cannot have the best curriculum. We cannot have well systems, adequate system that will not be part of fertile soil, which is very important. Something that it's a gap. The art, sports, values are also included in the curriculum experience on the teaching the development of the teachers to be effective and continuous learning, to give innovative tools, to strengthen capacities for their foundational abilities and the management of the socio-emotional welfare of the students. If we focus on that, we will close a gap that is very, very important. Lastly, I want to mention the learning assessments because that's a big challenge to mention, to implement a robust system, to be formative, and to go beyond measuring and to give the teacher, director, school useful information to make the right decisions educational wise. We've had some advances, but we still need the school to teach them what to do with the information we give them. We have done in the We've had some good assessments, but we still need to train the school, the teacher, director, principal, what to do with the information we're providing. I think that is going to help us to ensure a continuous learning and quality learning.
So please, Minister David Andrew
Yes.
from Grenada, please.
Thank you very much. And let me echo the sentiments of gratitude to all of the organizers, SUMMA, KIX LAC, for having us here to discuss what I think is a very, very important part of education, early childhood education, because I think if we get it right at this level, several of the other challenges we grapple with much later down in the children's educational journey, that becomes a non-issue. Now, in terms of the challenges and the debts, I think one of the key challenges is weak intersectoral collaboration. I think when you have, when you consider early childhood and the fact that in most of our education systems, we are mandated to treat with them by law at the age of 5, you have several other players that interact with them earlier on, prenatal, antenatal. In fact, the best starts are given to our children prior to the times they come to us in education settings. And so there is, in my view, a need for stronger sectoral collaboration to ensure that by the time the children get to us in education settings, we have the best product to invest into to help with the educational journey. I think there is inadequate adherence to our and enforcement of early childhood standards. So there are standards, but there is inadequate enforcement, and so still, even if you have good standards, if people don't follow them, we still could fail the children. Insufficient resources, that is always a challenge. One where we are not able to create the right environments, we don't have the right resourcing and the right tooling, the equipment necessary to make things safe, the right play material, all of these things. And then the issue of untrained teachers. We have several persons in our system, several teachers who are not trained in early childhood education. And so yes, they may have academic qualification, but they don't understand enough of the developmental fundamentals for early childhood development, and they miss several things. And urgent to address for me is the foundational literacies of numeracy and literacy skills, teacher qualification and teacher training. We think that is extremely crucial. The issue of outdated policies. Now, we have policies that are under review at this point, because it's important to update our policies to reflect what we're trying to do. Even the Education Act in our setting, in my view, needs some sections to be reviewed and reformed, because we have some sections that speak to the qualification necessary to become a teacher at the preschool level, which are much lower than those to become a teacher at, say, secondary level. And in my view, it ought to be the reverse, where you have the more qualified teachers at the lower level. And so that is an area for review. In some cases, the lack of understanding of the importance of play and the very important fundamental skills, social, fine muscle development skills, all of these things that you acquire in play. In terms of assessment, We have available early childhood checklist. However, managing the data, so we have a good checklist to see what needs to happen by what and what milestones, but managing the data is a challenge. So that even though you have that checklist, and we can check off and say, well, this is happening, we don't get to use the data appropriately for it to inform and to guide what decisions are made coming after to continuously work with our children. I thank you. I have a couple seconds inside.
Thank you so much. You even managed to save 20 seconds. That's incredible. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, Permanent Secretary, please, Robert Renicks.
Okay, good morning, everybody. And again, I would like to endorse the thanks, the gratitude to GPA, KIX, SUMMA, even OECS Commission for all of this. I don't think I'm going to need 4 minutes because Minister Andrew touched on many of our points because we have similar situation in the region. And I also have to be very careful with what I say because the coordinator of my early childhood development, early childhood, is right here, so she's looking at me. But yes, in the region, in Dominica, we have made great strides in the areas of early childhood and foundational learning. For example, in 2012, we moved to universal access to early childhood education. In fact, 32 out of our 45 early childhood centers are now government-owned, so they are incorporated into the primary school. So we only have about 13 private schools. In addition to that, we have, I know we're looking at the shortcomings, the debts, and so on. We have also provided grants to all of those private schools. However, we still have a lot of gaps in our early childhood system. For example, there is a need to regularize the positions of early childhood educators. Prior to 2012, anybody who wanted to open a preschool could open a preschool. A lot of our teachers at the preschool are still untrained. Some of them don't even have the basic entry requirements into the public service, which is for CXC subjects. So some of them don't even have that. And yet they open early childhood centers. Another debt is the salaries paid to early childhood educators. It is so small. In fact, even those attached to our schools are paid, they're contracted. So every year we have to renew the contract, and the pay is so small that there is very little motivation for these teachers. And as Minister Andrew said, one of our biggest challenges is the quality of teachers. Like I said, they are not trained and they don't have the entry requirements. And research has shown that if we want to improve teaching and learning, probably the greatest single factor is quality of teachers. So if we don't have the quality teachers, they're going to struggle. In terms of assessment, we have in Dominica the early identification checklist. That is for the preschool teachers. We also have the curriculum-based measurement for grades 1, K and grade 1. We have the grade 2 national assessment. So while we do have these assessments, we present the assessments to the students, but the use of the data, which is really important in improving student performance, this is lacking. So while we have this, we don't have the sufficient training for teachers in terms of teaching and the use of data to improve learning. And finally, the resources. Resources. We lack resources, and if you don't have resources at the early childhood education level, we're going to have a really big gap. So I leave my 5 seconds to Minister King.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Minister. Please, Mr. King.
Thank you very much. And first, let me thank the organizers for this very important activity. and also thank the government and people of Guatemala for their wonderful job hosting us thus far. I really don't have much to say because I'm speaking last and I can identify with all the issues raised by the previous speakers. Nevertheless, though, I think it is my responsibility to identify a couple of issues that might not have come up in terms of gaps. Only to start, though, by saying that in our case, Saint Vincent and the Grenadines, we are a country of 32 islands, yes? And we have major settlements and 6. So that while being small, our challenges are multiplied because of size, because we are always challenged with issues of resources, our geography, because you're talking about the distance between, let us say, the capital or the urban areas, or some people say the mainland territory of Saint Vincent and the various Grenadine islands. So you have to be in a system where you want everything to be in place to allow each child to have a fair chance at progressing. So geography and resources do provide some challenges. I must say, though, that at the turn of the 21st century, we had a situation where only one of our early childhood cohort children, 1 out of 10, had access to early childhood education. And we took a position to move towards universal early childhood education. And I can proudly say that we are almost there, where we have a situation at present of 9 out of every 10 who now have access to early childhood education. Now, one of the major challenge we have, and it has resulted in several gaps, some you have heard before, but in our case, we have tended to view early childhood education as not that important because we believe the longer the child stays at school, the greater the opportunity to correct whatever difficulties might have existed at that early stage. But as we are proving now, that is very difficult to achieve because you're going to find that not all schools are at that level to provide that sort of support to allow for the improvement. And so what we have sought to do is to deal with the issue of training that would help our early childhood children to have let us say, a fair chance going forward, is to regulate what happened in the preschool system. Let me put it this way. From 5 to about 8, that early part, it is covered under the primary school system, elementary school. However, that 3 to 5, as I mentioned, that was ignored. But now we are moving to that stage where, as I'm saying, we are having universal access for those early learners. And what we have been doing is to ensure that the regulations allow for trained teachers. I mean, let me say quickly, not too long ago, the percentage of trained persons, training meaning that you have some training in early childhood education. The facilitators, teachers, their numbers in terms of trained personnel was 60%. Only 10% of them had degree, right? And so we had to move to a stage where we had to upgrade that training, where now you're basically making it mandatory that persons are trained before they enter. I believe we would have some more time to explore this later on, but I want to mention two critical areas quickly. One, early detection of learning difficulties. That is a major challenge that we have, and we know that leads to gaps, okay? And the other issue is that of providing data, real-time data, to allow us to track the early learners so that we could make whatever timely interventions that are necessary to correct whatever learning difficulties they have. I'll stop there for now.
Muchas gracias. Thank you so much, Mr. King. I won't go into summarizing because I think it was very impressive. The clarity, things are common, but also things are different. But definitely teachers is something that's important, especially in the case of the Caribbean, the entry requirements. We talked actually while we're in our last meeting in Barbados in Saint Vincent, and with the Joint Board of Education, Lorette, where's Lorette? Lorette there. We had the meeting with all the colleges from all countries that joined the colleges, the UE. And one of the things was, well, we really have to talk about teacher requirements, entry requirements. And I think that's something to be talked about, and I'm very happy that we have talked about that. So let's move forward to the next question, and maybe we'll start from there so that we're fair, so that now they have to struggle with new ideas. So I want to move into innovations and asking you, what if, and I'm sure there are innovations that you have been promoting from your Ministries of Education in regards to early literacy. What are those innovations? What do you think the effect is, or if you know already by any evaluation or measurement, but there might not be yet any measurement on the impact, but what do you foresee, suspect is having an impact on the level of learning skills in terms of early literacy, and also in terms of the gaps? And let's talk a bit about on the gaps. Our delegate from the Ministry of Guatemala was mentioning indigenous populations, for example. And of course, that's an issue, the issue of voice in the Caribbean, it's another issue, etc. So if we can stress that. And I just want to, before I start the round of questions, it's important to recognize and acknowledge the fact that although, of course, resources is another thing that comes out very much, we have some assets in the Caribbean and in Latin America that are quite unique as well. And I want to maybe paraphrase Andrea Schleicher, and here we have Yuri from the OECD. We're together in a panel a couple of weeks ago, and he was comparing actually Peru and some Latin American countries with Singapore and some very high quality systems in Asia. And he said, you know, the OECD and PISA are showing that in terms of cognitive skills, these countries are doing very well. But in terms of social and emotional skills, in some cases, because of the cultural issues and other issues, some Latin American countries actually are very high in the table, let's say in the ranking table of social and emotional skills. So there is an asset in our culture that sometimes it's not about only, it's also about nurturing our maybe culture in terms of the students are happy students, they're part of the community, etc., that we can build from. So it's not they're the ones that they have and they have nots. It's they have and have nots regarding what? And I just want to make the point that we can innovate based on our own cultural assets that are socio-emotional skills and community-based values that the Minister of El Salvador was stressing as well. So, Yuri, I hope I paraphrased well. Andreas, if not, you can you can tell me. So, Minister Curtis King, please go ahead.
Visions. I will start with basic things. One, in our case, in 2019, we had 130 preschools, and I'm speaking about those now 3 to 5, okay? And 67 primary schools. Now, most of the preschools, or early childhood centers, as we call them, they were privately owned. And what the state did was to invest into these private-run early childhood centers or preschool by providing each with a subvention. Unfortunately, over the years, what we have discovered is that even with the subvention, most of these schools found it difficult to produce the sort of quality that was required. And as such, the government then had to make a targeted intervention, not only increasing the subvention so that you could attract better qualified persons, because these persons were lowly paid. And we still have a lot of work to do in that area. But certainly, what the government has done is to move to that stage where Dominica is. We are far from there, but we are moving towards that stage. So we are now establishing state-run early childhood centers, or state-run preschools, as we call them. And so the numbers, as I speak, is down to 100, where we have now 80 plus privately run preschools. Now, what that has done is to allow us to set standards for the preschools. So when we set the standards, we require the private schools to operate in the same way. And those standards we are talking about is not just in attracting qualified teachers, but in terms of enhancing the curriculum. In 2019, we started a revision of our curriculum for the early childhood centers. Of course, the primary school would have their curriculum from age 5. And by 2021, we had completed that curriculum, and that is being implemented. Then we had to move towards the stage of training teachers. And what we have done, working with the OECS, working with the University of the West Indies, and having that program coordinated by our community college, our lone community college, we are producing graduates from that program who are at 2 levels. Those at the associate degree level, a 2-year program that have the student teachers, facilitators involved not only in the academic training, but in the practical training in a classroom situation. And we also do the degree program, which is of 3 years duration. And again, with a significant practical component, so that you are enhancing the quality of the program at those early childhood centers. And I mean, there are a lot of programs. Look, in terms of the curriculum, significant effort working through the OECS pools in enhancing the curriculum. And I'll tell you something else about the early childhood centers in particular. What we found, that in a lot of instances, in a lot of schools, persons were quote-unquote plain teachers. And hence the focus was too much on content and not on play, and using some of those other techniques that would help the children to develop these critical skills, in the socio-emotional skills that are required, building their sensory motor skills, and so on and so on. And the improvement in the curriculum has done a lot to that. So I would stay there
so much.
and allow others to share.
Remarkable. Thank you so much. Please, Mr. Robert.
Yeah.
One.
Okay, so so in terms of innovations in Dominica, In terms of innovation, the government of Dominica, we have, from around 2010, 2012, we have placed a lot of focus on early childhood education. In fact, prior to 2012, like I said, anyone could open a preschool. You wanted to make some money, you opened a preschool. And it was very expensive for parents to send the children to this preschool. In fact, when I sent my first son, to preschool about 15 years ago, I paid over $1,000 a year for preschool. So you can imagine the number of parents who could not afford to send their children to school. So in 2012, we moved to universal access to early childhood education, where we made it mandatory, like universal secondary education, and we already had universal primary education. So we made it mandatory for children to attend early childhood centers. One of the first things we did was provide a grant to every early childhood centers. And in addition to that, like I said earlier, we took over some of the early childhood centers. We now have 32 out of 45 government-owned. And we are looking, I think, to take over 3 more over the next few weeks. We will be taking over 3 more of those. So that is something that we have done. And also in 2016, we established an early childhood development unit, and Mrs. George is head of that unit. She's right there. So we have the unit. Now, we also have a challenge with that. Although we have 3 people in this unit, it still poses a challenge, because if you have ever been to Dominica, you will know our topography is not an easy one to traverse. So this is something that we have done. In addition to that, we have a draft early childhood education policy. It is still in draft. We will hopefully complete that draft soon and take it to cabinet. Further, we have engaged roving caregivers, and these roving caregivers, their responsibility is for early stimulation. So before they get to preschool, we have roving caregivers actually go to the homes of the children to assist them. So we have the roving caregivers, we have the early childhood educators. Something that we are currently working on, and we realized that was a challenge in the past, we are trying to regularize the engagement of early childhood educators. So no longer, we are trying to get them off the contract system and ensure that they are like the regular classroom teacher. They will have the entry requirements. They will, once they have the entry requirements, we will engage them as regular classroom teachers. So they will no longer be early childhood practitioners. They will be the regular teachers with the separate title. So this is something that we're looking at. Also, yeah, I know my time is running out. Also, we have school feeding programs for our children at every one of our public schools. We have school feeding programs. So if the parent is not able to provide for the children, they can come to school, they get a hot meal. We also provide, under our social protection programs, we also provide uniforms for children. So we have the school feeding program, we have uniforms for children, and for the practitioners, we collaborate with UWI, the University of the West Indies, Open Campus, and we provide training at the degree level for some of our teachers. They pay for it. We pay, in some cases, we assist financially. But the UWI Open Campus provides training for some of our teachers. In fact, this year, I think we had about 4 or 5 teachers graduating with degrees at the early childhood level. Yes, and we also built, with funding from the Maria Holder Foundation, we also built 7 new preschools at different locations, and that is in addition to 5 preschools which were recently refurbished under the OECS Pearl program. So these are some of the things that we're doing. And I also want to just add that in terms of migrant students, in Dominica, we don't see migrant students. So it could be from Haiti, China, wherever they are. Whenever they come to Dominica and they enter our schools, they are our children. So we don't see a Haitian student, we don't see a Chinese, we see children. And we treat every single child the same way, no discrimination in our schools. So these are some of the things that we have done back home.
Thank you so much, Minister. Minister Andrew?
Yes, thank you. So I think quite a few of the things that my colleagues mentioned obtaining Grenada as well, but I will limit my response to issues of teacher training, assessment, and curriculum. So in terms of the curriculum, at the early childhood level, we've long introduced the high scope curriculum, which is a research-based curriculum that promotes active learning on the part of the children, and they have the opportunities to learn through play and involving their interactions with the environment, adults and peers. In addition, there's been curriculum reform for grades K to 3, and the OECS level development of a digital curriculum that's been implemented. So that for us is quite good and making a lot of impact and creating great interest. Also, the piloting for use of interactive softwares. We have piloted in some of our primary school at the lower levels interactive softwares in the areas of literacy and numeracy as part of our list of interventions to deal with the literacy and numeracy challenges across the education sector, but that targets the lower levels there. Interestingly, the early grades reading assessment, which is the EGRA, the report for 2024 indicates that there has been some improvement in the reading levels of the persons who took part, who were assessed between ages 5 and 10 across our primary school system. So that for us speaks to positives happening through the curriculum area in education. In terms of teacher training and support, professional development training is provided for all preschool teachers every year. For a 2-week period, we have what we call the SUMMA Institute, and within that 2-week period, teachers are trained and provided with various aspects of training as might be discovered in the routine supervision by the early childhood education officer. They're also part of the learning communities, the professional development that takes place online in collaboration with the OECS, and they trained based on the needs identified by the early education officers, early childhood education officers. In terms of assessment and learning, the development of the early childhood development checklist, I kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, to track students' progress. So we might need some support to be able to monitor and manage the data better, to be able to make better use of it, so it further guides instruction, but to guide the instructional process and to guide teachers. And there's the National Reading and Mathematics Assessment administered in grades 1 and 2. And to do that, we also have special support for persons with special needs in those examinations. So those who might need readers, those who might need additional support, in some cases Braille or whatever it might be, some of those supports might be available to students doing the exams, and even at the CSEC level, but I mean, we're talking early childhood here. So,
Minister,
and finally,
are they mandatory, the assessments? Are they mandatory
yes,
or voluntary?
Yes, they are mandatory.
Excellent.
Yes. And the implementation of the high scope program has impacted foundational learning, especially the support provided for students with disabilities, and the learning environment support. Active learning provides the opportunity for students to select their own interest of area, the areas of interest, and to get individual support as they work in small groups with their teachers. So for us, some of these students are also provided with special needs support for the MCT, which is the minimum competency test, sorry, when my time is running out, I speak faster. The minimum competency test and the CPEA, which is the Caribbean Primary Exit Assessment, those supports are provided, and we're quite confident that they're making good impact in terms of the question. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Yeah, totally fine. Muchas gracias. Ministro Pineda, por favor.
Thank you very much. I think when we talk about transforming the educational system of a country, it's something that it's very important, and it's the greater involvement of the highest level of politics in the country. Otherwise, it won't work because we need resources, we need to modify policies, etc. El Salvador was able to achieve and have a precedent that one of their main axes of their policies would be education, along with health and security, right? So we started a reformation process about 3 years back, and that starts with the president's ruling that it's priority for the country, but it starts listening to education specialists. I'm not talking someone behind their desk with AC and comfortable. I'm saying talking with teachers, principals, parents, because of the co-responsibility and the student. And that's how reformation starts, with how my new school, Mi Nueva Escuela, we can say we have a good model, educational model that is appropriate for El Salvador, that incorporates a series of transformations that, of course, we're pretty young. We just started, but it has a great projection to transform the educational system of the country. So when we came to the Ministry of Education, there was a budget assignment for $800 million. We are implementing $1 billion. So inflation and money's not the same as 4 or 5 years, but I agree. And the relationship with the GDP, we see a 2.2% of the management. So not only shows the decision of acting in education, but a giving and contribute for this to happen. You know perfectly that, and I do not want you to misunderstand that technology is the solution for educational problems. Obviously not, but it's tremendously important. We should not be lost in that. We give a computer, for example, to each 1.2 million students that we have in the it's a computer they own, is not for them to leave it at home or in the school and exchange it. They take it with them for 3 years of preschooler. They get a tablet, a light one, with programs for that age, so age adequate. And then first to third, a robust tablet, and then fourth and on, a laptop, and they keep it. We started a very ambitious project, and we remodeled 2 schools per day. That is a political decision. Some may think it's overboard or scandalous, but the people in prison are the ones rebuilding schools. Between 150 to 300 inmates per school. They come in, they rebuild, we give them materials. Obviously, we have standards for infrastructure. Those standards have been used in school rebuilding, and I could say with all sureness, come visit us, go see it. I don't think there's a private school that has the quality, talking about standards of infrastructure, lighting, amount of children per class, air circulation, to see these conditions. So in general, there are things that we need to mention as well. When it comes to early childhood education, it's a systemic investment for our future. Latin American countries, not only El Salvador, has forgotten early childhood until this time it's getting hyped or trendy. So the efforts are insufficient to achieve what we're looking for. It is important to understand that what we don't do for these little children until they get to 5 years old, we lose them the rest of their life. They're going to learn some other things for sure, but the opportunity, we let it go. Now we created structural quality standards for early childhood, something specific for that. Many people here are related with the contribution and technical support about it. We have also done a massive investment. I was skipping something. The strategy that we've had in curriculum change, curriculum filled with content, not now the different competences that the children, according to their age, are taking. It's very important. We printed we have a massive investment in children literature. We've given children from 3 to 5 a collection of growing reading, and that motivates children to read, but also has a component for children to read with their mom, dad, caretaker. We know the social emotional impact this has in our children. Digital material, different materials, and teaching in the right level type of, even though we did not got the pre-made packages and implemented them, we saw the experiences, the good experiences, that some methodologies we incorporate them within our program called My New School. Teaching in the right level has been very important to identify the needs for children and to work on education. The advances are obviously complemented with deep innovation in training and the teacher and accompanying our teacher. We know for sure that training our teacher is definitely important. We have noble teachers program because their training is not allied to the strategy we have. So we immediately have them as candidate and we select them mandatory to participate in this training of noble teachers to orient them where to go. And we have prioritized the continuous update, math, language, and other grades. Also in the reflection journey we've had, we implemented technology to focus their level of knowledge with different platforms that allow them, in the case of reading, to see how much each kid is reading, which one has more need in something. Again, we just started. There's a long way to go. Please stay tuned for the updates because we have a lot to transform our country's education. I'm going to try to share that the decisions of Guatemala for early childhood education start with the commitment of take care of the public resources, the budget that we have. From there, we have 8 decisions, very specific actions related to the attention of early childhood. We recognize 3 models, 3 ways of early childhood: institutional, communitarian, and a hybrid modality. This has actions that don't leave children behind. So the curriculum update for initial children education, the design and the building of different models of infrastructure for the attention for early childhood. These three models are versatile and they can be adapted to different contexts. In the training, I've said this before, that one of our main weaknesses, that to start having staff who are professionals, expert, specialists, we have a course or with a diploma to prepare these people, and that includes knowledge and development, as the minister Pineda was saying, the social emotional, the sensitivity of the teacher, the mother, the caretaker for taking care of the children, the materials that are libraries, educational material. And I also want to mention this material that we've developed. They have lactate moms guidelines to have development issues, artistic thought development, behavioral changes, social behavioral challenges. Those are very important. This type of material helps the comprehensive and holistic development. We also have the usage of technology. We've created a virtual system of evidence collection because we want to give identity to our children. We want to make sure we do not exclude any of our children and to be visible to the system. We have the agreement, the government agreement that gives lives to the policy. We have a policy of holistic development of early childhood education, but this policy, it's very young. We are going to change this policy because it implies an urgent upgrade. We also have 45 video creation related with early childhood attention and education. With that, we are closing a circle of resources that in actions that we want to have in order to attend holistically boys and girls and ensure their good education. The goal is that we're having the basis set. So being born in a poor context, being a girl, women, any circumstance that marks inequality will let this people, anyone, to have access to education. It doesn't matter their condition. We're going to have the last round of questions. We're going to ask, please, 3 minutes, because it depends on you that people can have lunch. So popularity ranking is going to be lowering as the time goes by. Knowing that KIX is a support mechanism to countries, you all are leading, you're visualizing, generating this future, right? The question is how international community can be for service of the countries. The direct and concrete question, the most concrete, we don't want great answers. Just be very succinct in your responses. What support do you think is priority from KIX? From someone like KIX. If we're talking about resources for what? Even if we can talk about magnitude, what are we talking about? I mean, trying to set the context of advanced and realistic. So in 2 years when we meet, if it was in Honduras and Guatemala, we should meet in the Caribbean. that we can say, this is what we said, these are the advances, this is the support KIX has given, not only quantity, but what priorities and types of priorities in capacity building, resources. Anyway, there are many ways of, like training t-shirts, for example. Many innovations are legal, very interesting, and that is related with things that we can see with research and studies. Some are with visits, right? There are many instruments, many tools. So the challenge I give you and challenge us as institutions to listen to serve you as ministries. What things can be useful for you? We're going to start from Guatemala. Specifically, I suggest or I request the support in the creation of monetary system, but a regional system that, far from comparing one another, being in a point of comparison to allow us to know, identify similarities, and learn and support one another, because we're going to have a permanent, continuous knowledge of what's happening in the region. That also includes that ourselves are proposing a system of follow up and evidence collection. So this systems punctually would be very important for us. And to that, I add that we keep or increase the visits between countries to learn in situ what we're all doing, but not to know great cities, but to go to places where real people are, to see the real need. That strengthens the conscious to make better decisions. Technology and knowledge exchange. Spaces like this, without a doubt, are very important. But their challenge is how we go talk, we share the nice things, the things we want people to hear, the ones we're doing well, the ones we don't do well. Sometimes we keep them and we are silenced about it. But the main challenge is how to jump in the quality and excellence. All the countries here are committed to in real time, systemically, to share the change of our systems and our countries with a collaboration. Javier, we were starting with you before we joined this forum. I was telling you we would have to look for the existing mechanisms. For example, us as El Salvador are doing a great effort to join SICA region countries through the ministers of education, and we're pushing a system of assessment in a regional level. We're talking about things that are complicated, not only to define the dimensions of the assessment system, it's a problem, but we need to start doing that. We're used to measure things with the international standardized test or assessments where the belt is a little loose, but it's a parameter that we need to follow. But trying to get a system, make a system like the Caribbean is doing or the OECS is doing within the SICA countries, where it would have great benefits in this type of policy. So that is very important to give that step to go from something beyond than sharing. I loved what Carla was saying at the beginning. Listen to ourselves, we'll do things great, and reflect and build together how to execute that building, that capacity building, where the main challenge is.
I think in terms of what support we might actively want, I think creating and promoting a play-based learning environment will be something we'd want. The advocacy surrounding it, the material necessary, and training in parent education surrounding all of that will be something that we'll gladly benefit from. Then strategic parent support and advocacy to develop a plan, a partnership to provide support for parents with the goal of helping them understand the benefits of early childhood education and its development, specifically and more so what's most developmentally appropriate. Also important will be creating a repository, a resource repository for both educators and parents in terms of early childhood education, so the material become readily available, easily reachable. Promoting play-based learning, and I will say one final one, the procurement of learning resources to support the play-based curriculum. You hear that coming out quite a lot in some of the remarks I make, because it's quite important for us, and we'd be happy to receive support there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Minister?
Yes. Like I said, the region, in the OECS region, we basically have the same concerns, the same needs, because we are like one.
That's a very good thing.
Like
it's an opportunity. You know.
Yes. So, like Minister King said, for Dominica, key areas that we need the help with is training of teachers, training for our teachers. We do some in Dominica, but we do the bi-weekly professional development. But we need it at a higher level. And we have I know within the region, we have the technical experts who can provide that training for us. But sometimes it is expensive for the teachers to receive that training. Also, we need, like Minister King said, we need the resources, the play-based resources for early childhood. We did get some recently get some under the OECS Pearl project, but it is only for 5 schools. We have 45 schools, 45 preschools. Two of our most important units within the Ministry of Education is the Early Childhood Unit and the Special Education Unit. Resources for special education needs students is very expensive. So if we could get some devices and assessment tools for for special education needs, that would also be useful. Also, we have devices. We have provided devices to some students, but then the software is expensive and limited in terms of the duration. So you might pay $1,000 for a piece of software that you can only use for 1 year, and then you have to pay $1,000 every single year for this, which is ridiculous in my view. So if we could get assistance with that. We are currently developing a policy. Well, we have the policy on a draft policy. If we could get further assistance with that before we submit it to Cabinet, that would also be useful. So in short, resources for ECD, resources for SCN, and teacher training. These are all 3 critical areas. Thank you.
Yes.
One. Yes, quickly. Our challenge is always resources, as we indicated. But we believe that working with whatever resources we have, we can reach a significant way if there's a greater level of collaboration, even at the regional level, even as we speak about OECS attempts at harmonizing our education policies and so on. So I'm saying we need even greater collaboration at that level, and that would make our resource scarcity even better, okay? But there's a critical area that we think that we need a lot of assistance in. That is the early detection of learning disabilities. You can't build a house if you don't have a strong foundation. And if we are not able to detect those challenges at a very early level, then we are going to be fighting a losing battle Yes? So we need support in that area. Very dear to me is the fact that we keep talking about the mantra, no child shall be left behind. But there's a critical component of our child population that we tend to ignore sometimes. I'm talking about the children who are differently able. A. And B, the exceptional children. We need support in those areas. And let me put it this way, the differently able children, we are seeking to integrate them in our regular education system. Of course, we recognize that there are challenges and not every child will be able to fit into the general program to start with. We have reached out to the government of Cuba, and we have had an expert come in to St. Vincent to work with us, to examine the situation and help us to develop an intervention. So this is the sort of support we are looking at. Then with the exceptional child, more and more, we are seeing that some of our young children are very, very exceptional. The challenge they have is that the school system is boring to them. And hence, they are being neglected because many of our teachers, most of our teachers, cannot deal with these students in an effective manner, and hence, these children are ignored. If we are saying no child should be left behind, we have to find a way of making targeted intervention to assist these children. So these are areas of support that we are thinking of. Thank you very much.
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much for being very precise, and that helps to think about many of the things that you have mentioned. Just to mention, one of the things that was talked about was the repository, and just to announce, we will have time during these 3 days to talk about that, but in partnership with the EF, the Education Endowment Foundation, and thanks, of course, to the support of KIX, we're launching very soon an early childhood toolkit based on the toolkit developed by the EF, the Education Endowment Foundation, but contextualized with evidence from Latin America and the Caribbean. And that would allow us to really learn, well, what are those countries that are improving? What are they doing? So in Spanish it would be basically, ¿por qué mejoran los que mejoran? No? Why those that improve actually improve? But to answer that question that seems quite basic is very hard, and it has to be based on evidence. So we're launching within the KIX initiative this new toolkit in a few months that will allow countries to learn what is research actually showing in terms of what are the actual levels that create real impact in education. So that will kind of complement the effective pedagogical practice platform that we already have, and that many countries have been using, and we don't have too much time to answer that, but they have been using to inform their teacher policy training. So I just wanted to mention that also, because one of the things also how we learn from each other, we're launching a platform on effective reforms. So it's not at the classroom level, but more structural reforms in terms to learn, for example, how to better fund equitable funding, for example. Are there good innovations in the region around that, etc.? So we're moving towards these repositories of evidence. And of course, teacher training has been said a lot, and I think, well, we will have time to discuss the University of West Indies project that we are doing. I also thank a lot the fact that you have mentioned special needs. I think it's something that we tend to overlook sometimes. It's so important to bring it up. I just want to thank you very much for the panel. I want to say that it is incredible that we're able to dream together And I just want to put one example, maybe, of the things that we do when we unite. Uh, we have one of the longest roads in the world, which is the Panamericana. It's around more than 25,000 kilometers. That means all countries have to build their part. And this was a huge dream that is there. But on the other hand, I just want to say, so that shows that if we work together, we can really think in building something that seems unreal, such as a road from Alaska to Ushuaia in Argentina. Just only one road that connects the whole continent. We would have to think maybe of a bridge to the Caribbean. But the important things are, although we were able to dream of big things in Latin America and the Caribbean together, when we work together, the power and the strength of a chain is only as strong as its weakest link, right? And this huge road has only 100 kilometers that has never been conquered, which is El Tapón del Darién in Panama, right? That, I would love to invite all of us to think of what is the Tapón of Darién in all of our own systems. That talón de Aquiles, I will use my Spanish here, that bottleneck that does not allow us to go through that revolutionary change that we're talking, and Germain was talking about the revolutionary change that we want to have, but that sometimes we are blocked by that end. So as we move forward through the days, let's think about that and how can KIX help in a very little way, but hopefully significantly to address those ends. So thank you so much to you all, and you have been very inspiring. Thank you so much.
Yes, just one thing. In the Cayman Islands last year, at the youth, during one of the youth sessions, there's one young lady from Jamaica who reminded us, and this has stuck with me. She reminded us that there is nothing wrong with the region that cannot be fixed by what is right with the region. Just remember that.
Thank you, an inspiring panel. We're gonna take a picture. Please, let's give him a hand. Thank you for this valuable space. It's been very good to reflect on the gaps and challenges and the innovations done in different countries. With this panel, we finished our pre-lunch block. We are going to invite you to have lunch at the hotel's restaurant. There's a group, have an invitation to go to a meeting, a separate meeting. Those part of that high-level meeting, please, let's meet in the lobby, and the rest can join lunch in the restaurant. We'll be back, so you don't take a nap after lunch. 2:30, be back to continue with the work on the different delegations. Thank you.